Ellie and Chris Ruffalo here with your Week 4 2022 college football show. Do covering all the Week 4 college football games here at Pick Dogs. Ron, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Mitch. Can't complain. How about yourself?
Hanging in there. Got a lot of college football to go. We've got Thursday college football this week, and then next week back to just the Friday college football. Then I think it goes just almost every day. The Sun Belt, we've got to get in before the MAC, and it's I don't know. Why can't we all just get along? Chris, what do you how you doing today?
Doing well. I'm trying to be a little bit more vocal than I was this morning, but yeah, I'm
I mean,
excited.
Joe
Great Thursday,
Musgrove's pitching today. I figured you'd be like, it was your day.
bouncing off the wall. Yeah, no, I gotta keep calm. I got a whole day ahead of me, so I can't burn out by 2 o'clock. I gotta pace myself. But no, great Thursday action, great Friday action, and a loaded Saturday. I'm really liking this week's college football.
Well, Ron did an NFL show, an NFL rundown. He had a little trouble with the uploading. So if you didn't get the notification on it or you missed out on it, be sure to check it out at on our Pick Dogs channel. But he did do an NFL rundown, but it didn't get for some reason it didn't get that it normally gets. Anyways, let's just get into the Thursday night action here. We've got Virginia Tech, West Virginia, and Georgia State, Coastal Carolina, as well as Illinois against Chattanooga in a FCS, FBS type thing. Chris, any of these three games just jump off the page at you?
Uh, still like uh, Still like West Virginia personally. We alluded to it a bit on the morning show, but to summarize it quickly, I just don't trust Virginia Tech's offense. I know they got the better defense here, but I don't trust them to match scores with JT Daniels and the Mountaineers. And I think West Virginia ends up winning that one. If you don't want to take laying the 2.5, just take the money line. I think you're okay there. Also like the under in Coastal Georgia State. I think it's just going to be a bit of a slower paced game. Um, I know Georgia State's had their defensive issues, but I think this one stays. I think 62.5 just too high in this one. And I like Chattanooga plus the points against Illinois. I think Illinois wins that game, but I think they win it by 17. I don't think Illinois is going to be blowing anybody away here. I think they're focusing on their Big Ten opener a little bit here, and I think Chattanooga gets up and comes to play in this one. So I'm leaning towards Chattanooga in the points.
Ron, how about you?
Yeah, I don't love this Virginia Tech offense. I think defensively, like Chris mentioned, they are the better team defensively. But Grant Wells, while I do think he has some talent, some decision-making issues, he throws a good amount of interceptions. We saw that last year as well at Marshall. So Um, it's tough to back Virginia Tech now. They certainly do have the home field advantage and should be a pretty raucous home field environment tonight. But is that enough to get the win or the cover? You're only getting 2.5 points right now. I'm not sure. Right now, I'm leaning towards the under in that game. I do think West Virginia has the more potent offense, but I also think this West Virginia defense is a little bit underrated because of what we saw against Pittsburgh, what we saw against Kansas. They got beat pretty badly there. But I think both those offenses are just really solid this year. Kansas kind of surprisingly, but I like the under. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I don't think Virginia Tech does too much offensively.
Yeah, I think it's gonna. I think it's gonna be a sloppy, low-scoring game too, and that's when you're getting points with the home team. Usually, not a bad place to be in these type of spots. Lane Stadium is a tough building, and West Virginia has really shown me nothing this year except that they could choke down the stretch, and they've done it twice. They had the lead against Kansas, lost. Had the lead against Pitt, lost, and well, if they were playing an FCS team, I'd probably feel a little bit better about them than I do here. Virginia Tech did lose to Old Dominion. That was just a rough spot. I just really think that was a really, really rough spot for them. Tough to judge them there, but they came back, beat up, Boston College. Traditionally, is pretty big up front, and I don't know. I trust West Virginia 0. I don't care. It's still Kansas to me. Anyway, slice. We go into Friday night action. We got a triple header of games on Friday night. Syracuse, Virginia, Air Force, Nevada, and UTEP, Boise. Just a real puddle of disappointment in a couple teams that have the same colors. Ron, what do you think of these three?
I'll bring out the upset alert bell or whatever it was. I like UTEP plus the points, and Maybe a little sprinkle on the money line. The UTEP's been disappointing this season, but going into the year, this is one of the more talented teams on paper, one of the more experienced teams on paper. Their offense last week, they only put up 10 points. They had 7 turnovers in that game. It was tough to watch for the Miners offense, but 7 turnovers is not going to be a sustainable thing that Boise State can expect. I do think UTEP sharpens up offensively. I still like Gavin Hardison at quarterback, and this UTEP defense has been solid all season long, even against Oklahoma. Only giving up 490 yards is actually a big win facing a team like Oklahoma, who we just saw absolutely dominate Nebraska. So I think UTEP is going to hang in this game. I think it's going to be a single-digit game, honestly. So I'll take the points with the Miners.
Chris?
Yeah, I really like Syracuse here against Virginia. And Virginia, I like Brendan Armstrong at quarterback, but the Cavaliers have just had trouble scoring and really moving the ball consistently. That hasn't been an issue for Syracuse so far this season. 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread. And this is a Syracuse team that they beat up on Louisville, had a nice win over Purdue. Hung a 48 piece on UConn. I haven't been impressed with Virginia so far this season. I think Syracuse pulls out another big win here, wins this one by 2 scores. So I'll lay the points with the Orange.
Yeah, the Syracuse quarterback got absolutely lit up last week, and he did come back in. He's not listed on any injured list. They don't do that in college. It's a little different the way they handle injuries. So we're not really sure what his status is and what he's what he's going to be, but we know he's the much better team. This is not a good Virginia team this year, but at the same time, they're not horrible either. Well coached, and we know that much. As far as UTEP and Boise goes, I'm going to have to disagree with Ron here. I know that a lot of people have had a lot of faith in UTEP, and this is their 5th game of the season. So far, they haven't covered a game yet. They really have been a mound of disappointment, as well as that first game against North Texas. A lot of people had pretty high expectations of them, and they basically, as they say in Ron's videos in the comments, busted up their parlays on that one. And then, against Oklahoma, they got run over. And then against New Mexico, the game that they won, New Mexico State, excuse me, the Aggies, they were 17-point favorites in that one, won by a touchdown, 20-13. We just saw New Mexico State against, did they play Wisconsin this last week? Ooh, that was a beatdown with the ugly stick with Fred and Ethel Mertz playing quarterback. And then, then against the real New Mexico, well, they just went from bad to worse. I don't know. This is a lousy Boise team as far as things go, and I'm going to guess that Avalos is probably going to be gone after this season because the expectations Boise are a lot higher, but UTEP's a bad team this year. They just seem to be outmanned. We'll agree to disagree on that one. I don't love it, that's for sure. But
Give me the Miners.
I think Ron's right though. I think if you're going to play UTEP, just take them on the money line. That I can get behind. That I can sink.
I'll take the points too, though. I'll be a conservative. I'll take the points too.
15.5. Go into Saturday.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say it's kind of seems like the same Troy and App State kind of game in my opinion. Troy was pretty underwhelming before that game, and they kind of showed what everybody was expecting on the road in that one. So,
but Troy had covered prior to that.
Yeah,
They covered. They played at Ole Miss or something. They covered in that game. So it's like Troy at least is covered. I mean, UTEP's been destroyed they haven't come close to a cover yet. Their closest to covering was 10 points. Well, Troy, they might have, lost some battles, but they won a war, right? As they say.
Yeah.
Anyways, we go between the hedges on Saturday morning for the noontime start games. I'll just read down the list. We got the Georgia Bulldogs taking on Kent State, Michigan and Maryland. We got Auburn against Missouri, Mississippi State against Bowling Green, SMU TCU, Kansas Duke, Iowa State Baylor. Those are some really good games. Penn State Central Michigan, Louisville up against USF, Eastern Michigan Buffalo, Wake Clemson. Ron, just a smorgasbord of games to choose from there. What do you like?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go step by step with this 12 o'clock card. Let's start with that Bowling Green and Mississippi State game. We saw Bowling Green pull off a pretty big for their program, at least over Marshall. Marshall beat Notre Dame, and now Green beats Marshall. So I guess Bowling Green, Notre Dame. But last year we saw Bowling Green beat Minnesota on the road, a big time upset. They followed that up with a 7-point loss at Kent State, and I do think this is going to be a letdown spot for Bowling Green. I don't love that defense. The biggest weakness on their is their secondary, where they're at least 300 passing yards in each of the first 3 weeks, including a game against Eastern Kentucky of all teams. Now you're facing a pass happy Will Rogers and Mike Leach offense in Mississippi State. Usually not going to end up too well. So I don't think Bowling Green's offense does much, and I don't think their defense is off the field. So I think Mississippi State wins this one in a rout. So I'll lay the points with the Bulldogs there. And the other games, um, you know, the Kentucky, we went over the Kentucky game. Oh, no, that's not in this time slot. The Louisville USF game. It's pretty interesting as you've got a USF team that just very close to upsetting Florida in that one on the road. And they have a really strong run game. That's the reason why they were even close in that one is they ran for over 200 yards against the Florida defense. Now you've got Louisville, who's had stopping the run this season and really season long, and we know that they've been struggling with tackling really for the last 10 years or so. So I think USF's offense will be able to move the football. I think Louisville's offense should be able to score at will against a pretty weak USF defense. So I like the over in that Louisville USF battle.
Chris, how about you?
Yeah, there are a couple I like here. I like the under between Kent State and Georgia. I just don't think that Kent State's going to be able to score enough to help us get over this total of 61.5. I do expect Georgia to get into the high 40s in this one, but I don't expect Kent State to do much of anything there. So I like the under 61.5 in that one. I like TCU SMU to go over the total of 70.5. That just feels like a 48 to 45 kind of game, whichever way you have it going. I don't think there's going to be much defense played in that one at all. I do like the over in that Bowling Green Mississippi State game. I think that Mississippi State, like Ron said, going to have a field day against the Bowling Green secondary. And even if we get 3 points from Bowling Green, I think that'll probably be enough to tip the scales over the number. And I like USF plus the points. I think getting the hook, especially sitting at 14.5. I think USF can keep within the number. That looked really good against Florida. Maybe Florida was caught looking ahead to this week in a game we'll talk about later. But I think Louisville just, like I said, I don't know if they deserve to be 14.5-point favorites right now. So I'll go with USF. And the last one, I like Wake Forest plus the 7.5 against Clemson. Clemson has some quarterback issues. I think you're going to start hearing the calls for Cade Klubnik, or 5-star recruit, to replace DJ at starting quarterback for Clemson. I think this is going to be sort of the starting point for that. Is where you're going to start hearing these clamors. So I like Wake Forest.
I think the starting point's already happened. I think it's already started.
I think it's okay. I think it's going to get a lot heavier after this week. I like Wake Forest plus the points. I like Wake Forest money line in this one as well.
I like Georgia laying the 6 touchdowns and a field goal here against Kent State. I think the Bulldogs just absolutely dominate them. I also love Michigan against Maryland. It's a stone cold lock. Maryland, you don't go through 4 defensive coordinators in 4 years. Not for the good reasons. If you don't have problems, and I think Harbaugh has maybe turned a corner in his coaching career. I like Missouri against Auburn. Auburn, I wouldn't lay 7.5 points against Kent State if I'm with Auburn these days. And I like Duke against Kansas. A little bit of hysteria here. Kansas mania, right? But Duke is actually a pretty good team this season. Saw them bust up Northwestern, the big dogs in that game. Real low expectations at Duke this season. I like the Ponies against the Frogs. I think Rhett Lashley. A lot of possessions there. I like Baylor against Iowa State. I think this one, man, smash mouth game. Have those points in your back pocket in a game that could be 7-7, 9-9, type game goes into overtime, and having better than 2 points these days is really a very, very nice place to be in games that figure to be tight. The thing about these 2.5-point lines in college football now, with the new overtime rules, is that number one, you have a game that figures to be tight, right? So it's like you get, figures to be tight, you have a tight line, and then you get to overtime, and it's basically you're getting a touchdown, when you get to that point. So, why not take the points with 2.5? I think Eastern Michigan, maybe a little bit too much love here against Buffalo, but Buffalo, I don't know. I loved Eastern last week. I like them a little less here, laying the points. I always like them as a dog. I don't like them laying the points. I think the Wake Clemson game. I think Clemson's gonna. I think the issue that you have, Chris, here on your money line Wake, and we know you have you love Sam Hartman. We understand that you got.
I have my roster of quarterbacks that I love.
He's one of your guys, and we know that. It's like, he's one of these. Ruffalo gets these quarterbacks going, and he becomes like a groupie all unto himself. And Sam Hartman's been one of those guys for a few years now. But I think that Clemson's defense is so much better than Wake. Wake has no defense, and even though Clemson's starting quarterback, that I'm not even going to attempt the name, is not good, right? And the backup is better, and he is going to be the quarterback by the end of the season, and that is how Dabo Swinney does things. He does, he's basically said that already, and he'll say, he said it in the Georgia Tech game, and he'll say it again, that it's like, we're team, basically he set the stage that it's like, well, this is what I'm going to do. It's just a matter of when. And it may happen here, but the Clemson defense can make stops that the Wake defense can't. And under Clawson, their offense has been really good. Their defense has been really bad. Speaking about bad defense, we go to the next slate of games. We've got Temple taking on UMass. Full price admission for you, Ruffalo, on that one. They will not be accepting your Groupon. Got Colorado, UCLA. This game's gone to over 3 touchdowns now for UCLA. What a conundrum that thing is. Because now you've got a UCLA team that you got to lay over 3 touchdowns, and then Colorado is the other choice there. So it's just, what do you do? Western Kentucky against FIU. Not a banner year for the Golden Panthers, we will say. Tennessee, Florida. This is lines on the rise now. 10.5 Tennessee. Generally, when these teams play, when Florida wins, it's usually a blowout. When Tennessee wins, it's normally a nail biter. So, definitely one to look at there. We've got North Carolina and Notre Dame. I guess it's going to be a big day in Chapel Hill. 2.5 point move in that game through 0. Texas Tech plus 6.5 in Lubbock against the Horns. The Horns are not going to get a very nice reception there. Got Cincinnati playing Indiana. 2 touchdowns and a field goal it's going to take for the Bearcats this year. Michigan State getting a field goal at home. 5-point line movement in this game against Minnesota. Got San Diego State against Toledo. Not a good San Diego State team this year, getting 2.5 at home against a MAC team. App State against James Madison. Well, the world loves App State these days. Memphis, North Texas. Miami, Middle Tennessee. Ron, a lot of meat on the bone there. What do you think?
Yeah, plenty of meat. At Temple, UMass going to continue the trend, fading UMass on the road. They played home last week. I took them against Stony Brook because some reason they were underdogs. They won it outright, even though it was still a pretty bad performance. Now on the road, got to fade who they're playing. And I know Temple is not a team that you're looking to lay points with, especially almost 10 points with in most situations. But they have improved as the season's continued. Their defense is actually not too shitty, and I think they win going away. UMass just on the road, lost both games and straight up and against the spread to Tulane and Toledo. So give me Temple laying the points. In the other games, like Mitch mentioned, not the greatest season so far for FIU, and it doesn't look to be getting any brighter. When you're 31.5-point dogs in a conference game in the Conference USA, it's just not really looking pretty. And I do think Western Kentucky actually wins and covers this game. FIU, one of the worst teams in FBS this season. I think we should watch them play Hawaii to see who's really the worst. And FIU last game 41-20 or 41-12 against Texas State, giving up 5.3 yards per carry on the ground. It's not going to get any easier against Western Kentucky, who has more of a two-dimensional attack offensively. They run the ball a lot. Last year it was mostly just pass by Bailey Zappi, but they can run the football effectively. I think they dominate that game. That Florida Tennessee game, I know a lot of people around here will be excited for that one. Big time rivalry. Florida's, like Mitch mentioned, usually when they win this rivalry game, it's not usually close, but they're the dogs here for a reason. I don't really love this Florida team right now. It's still a lot of points though to lay with Tennessee. It's something I'm going to be keeping track of the rest of the week, see where that line goes. But right now I'm leaning towards the under. I just think that total is just a little bit too high. I think Florida's only chance of competing in this game is keeping the ball on the ground and getting back to their defensive style, like we saw against Utah, like we saw against Kentucky, where they kept them in the ball game. So I like the under there. In that UNC game, I like the Tar Heels on the money line or laying the point. The 1.5 points is Notre Dame this year, just not a good team. Their offense looks really rough, especially with the backup quarterback, and I don't think they score much, even against a pretty weak UNC defense. I like UNC there. I think Texas Tech can catch a cover against Texas. You're getting 6.5 points with the home team. I think Texas Tech, although they didn't cover and they really weren't even close to covering against NC State last week, I thought it was a better performance than what the numbers showed, and I actually do think Texas Tech is going to be competitive as the season continues. So, I like a lot in that 3:30 time slot.
Chris.
Yeah, I'm going to go with UCLA. I know it's crazy to lay 21.5 points with the Bruins, but that's just how bad the Colorado Buffaloes have been. Now, I know they played Air Force. That's probably why their rushing defense numbers are as
Would you
bad as
buy
they
that
are.
half a point all the way up there?
Maybe if that's what some people are into, but yeah, maybe buy down to 21 or even buy a point to 20.5. But if you look at what Colorado's they've been run all over this season. They've given up 362.7 rushing yards per game. And while UCLA, not your Air Forces of the world in terms of running the ball on the ground, they're still putting up 211 rushing yards per game. And I think this one's going to get ugly for Colorado again. So give me UCLA in that one. I also like Western Kentucky laying the big number against FIU. FIU just terrible in Western Kentucky. Now 30 points or more in 17 straight games. I don't think FIU is going to be able to even come close to keeping up with that. So give me Western Kentucky there. I also agree. I like Tennessee. I know it is a rivalry, but I think this one's Tennessee by at least 11 to 14 points in that one. So take Tennessee there. And I also like North Carolina. Again, I'm agreeing with a lot of what Ron said. Notre Dame just doesn't seem to have it, and I feel bad for Marcus Freeman inheriting this year's Notre Dame team, but sometimes you just don't have it, and that's what I'm thinking Notre Dame's going to go through. I think it's going to be a down year for the Irish. North Carolina's shown a lot of heart, a lot of solid stuff in the first 3 games. That App State defensive performance, not necessarily all that great, but still finding ways to get the job done. And in a near pick'em spot, maybe this is more of a fade of Notre Dame than anything else. But I'll take North Carolina there. And I also lean towards Minnesota laying the 3 against Michigan State. I like what Minnesota's been doing running the football, but definitely probably on the back end of the games I like in that time slot.
I'm going to skip Colorado, UCLA. I've been fading Colorado on a regular basis this season. I'm going to have to actually lay off this week because I think that 21.5, boy, UCLA just not a good cover team, not a good. It's kind of like the more games that UCLA loses, the more I feel the rug's going to get pulled out from under them. The more they win. Western FIU, I would lean Western, but once again, getting into that big numbers, it's like FIU is also getting some experience under their belt too as these weeks go on. Western can get a little sloppy. I like the Gators plus the points against Tennessee. This is a gift. When Tennessee wins, it's always a close one, and it's always a wild finish. And that's what makes this rivalry the rivalry. And then when Florida wins, they beat them by 35, 40, and rub their face in it. It's just the way that it works. Notre Dame against North Carolina. The line looked a little fishy, and still does. You would think that North Carolina would be favored by a little bit more at home, especially with the offensive problems that Notre Dame's had and the big offense that North Carolina has. It just looks funny to me. You might see a call that could affect that type of game too. So probably one I'll stay clear of. Texas Tech hates Texas's guts. My guess is going to be a real bad, nasty attitude there in Lubbock. I like Tech outright in that one, money line. And I like Michigan State against Minnesota. getting way ahead of themselves with the Gophers here. I like Ibrahim. I think he's a great story, comeback, and he's a really good player. But I think give Mel Tucker 3 points at home. I'll take Sparty in that one. I'm not going to get Flecked. Fleck wins, it's by 2, We've all been flecked before. Nothing fun about that. And I don't know. The San Diego State line just looks funny to me. So it's like I'll just go with somebody knows something. I'll go with somebody there with Toledo. And James Madison plus the points. Let's see what else. That's it for that slot for me. It's a lot of information. We've got Ole Miss taking on Tulsa. We've got Sac State taking on Colorado State. UCF versus Georgia Tech. Not a good Georgia Tech team this year. Washington State playing Oregon. He shall not be named. Had a big game last week. East Carolina versus Navy. Cal versus Arizona. Georgia Southern versus Ball State. Old Dominion versus Arkansas State. Liberty versus Akron. Houston versus Rice. In the intermediary slot. Ron? Just
yeah,
a lot of slop in
East Carolina has not really prepared well against triple option in recent years. We saw last year they did get the win, but only by 3 over Navy, 38-35, I believe the final score was. And that was a road game. The year before that, they lost 27-23. Year before that, they got blown out 42-10. So they haven't really been great against the triple option, and I think there's a lot of points to lay. I know this is one of the worst Navy teams we've seen in quite some time, but I still think there's a lot of points to lay with an option team that can at least keep the game lower scoring. So having those points in a total with 48.5, having 17 points, you're getting a lot of the line right there. So I lean towards Navy plus the points. I also like Tulsa plus the points. I'm fading Lane Kiffin, which is not always an easy thing to do when he's a favorite, because we've seen plenty of times when his teams are up big, even with the final moments of the game, he'll still leave. He's not going to take a knee. He's going to keep running the football and trying to score some more points, which is always tough to watch. We saw that week 1 against Troy, and I was sweating my cover. But I think Tulsa, the thing about Tulsa is they've got an experienced quarterback at Davis Brin. He makes mistakes, and really Tulsa's last few seasons have just all been about mistakes, turnovers, penalties. That's what really hurt the Golden Hurricanes. But this is still a very talented team. They run the football pretty well. Their defense is good in the secondary. They can get pressure on the quarterback. They blew out Jacksonville State last week, 54-17. Jacksonville State's a pretty solid FCS team, so that's a big-time win. 621 yards of offense. I think Tulsa moves the ball, and I think there's just way too many points. We saw Troy getting 21 points against Ole Miss at the beginning of the season. I think Tulsa's a far better team than Troy, so give me the points with Tulsa in that one.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to be on Tulsa as well. Like a lot of what Ron said, this is a pretty good Tulsa offense. Davis Brinney's thrown for over 1,200 yards already this season. And if Troy can cover 21 against Ole Miss, I don't see any reason that Tulsa can't. I think this is a Tulsa team that is definitely going to give Ole Miss some problems. They gave Jacksonville State a butt whooping last week, and while I'm not likening Jacksonville State to Ole Miss, I think there is something to be said for how well the offense for Tulsa is humming along right now. So give me Tulsa plus the 21.5 there. And I also, the only other one I looked at in this time slot was Houston laying the 17.5. I've been burned by Houston a couple times already this season, but I'm not buying into Rice after one win over Louisiana. I think that was more about Louisiana losing that game than it more was about Rice winning it. And I think if Houston is serious about contending in the AAC, they've got to use this game as a bit of a wake up call. So I'm going to go with Houston. I think they win this one by 3 scores.
Yeah, for me, it's I know that Clayton Tune is on the Mount Rushmore of 2022 of Chris Ruffalo quarterbacks, Sam Martin and Clayton Tune. He's got a few others that he likes on there. But I look at this slate of games, and UCF against Georgia Tech. This is a bad Georgia Tech team this year, but we've seen them against good teams, so it's hard to say 20.5 and UCF. Oh boy, they look so good against FAU, so bad against Louisville. I love Washington State here. I mean, they're begging you to take them, giving you 6.5 points at home against he who should not be named at quarterback. But they don't have to beg me too hard. I'm going to take them on the money line. They're going to absolutely shellac them. You went into Camp Randall, beat the Badgers. You sure as heck can beat he who cannot be named at quarterback on the road for the Ducks.
You think they're begging you to take the points?
Well, they're giving you 6.5 points at home for a team that's
No,
undefeated.
I just think they'd be begging you to lay the points with Oregon because they're the ranked team coming off the big win.
I don't even understand how they're. I tell you, without you saying that they were ranked, I never look at rankings, and it's like, the fact that you just said they were ranked was the first time I even realized that they were, because I don't know how you can be ranked with who could not be named at quarterback. Because we know you can't.
They just
win.
blew out BYU
at home. In their
home I know. I'm not saying I like them or don't, but
BYU is I got to say that BYU. For an independent, and their last year as an independent, they're going out in style, for being an independent. It's like they can schedule anyone they want and everything they want, and they've scheduled everybody. And it's like they got Arkansas next week, just the asterisk, it's like just keep piling on. I mean, BYU's schedule is crazy off the chain. So they're going to have some stumbles. And also Outson Stadium, a super tough building, but Washington State is another place that's really tough as well. And I think Washington State's going to just clobber them. I don't money line. I mean, I don't even understand it. I don't understand how Oregon's favorite. It makes no sense to me. Navy is dead to me after the Memphis game. And I like Cal against Arizona. I love fading Arizona. I don't know. Something about it just makes me feel good. Gives me that warm, fuzzy feeling. It's like, ooh. It's like, the nice thing about fading Arizona, you don't even have to really think about it, right? Arizona, take the other team. I don't think Akron bounces back against Liberty this week. We go to the I'm not going to touch Houston against Rice, but I would go Houston if I was betting that game. We got Kentucky against Northern Illinois. We got Utah State against UNLV. UNLV not bad this year. This is a good UNLV team. It's been a while since they've been reasonable. I think they're a bowl team. UNLV, Utah State. Utah State disappointing so far this season. Tulane against Southern Miss. Southern Miss probably a little better than people thought they were going to be. Rutgers against Iowa. Texas A&M against Arkansas. And another head scratcher to me as far as the point spread goes. South Alabama against La Tech. Troy against Marshall. Alabama against Vandy. Alabama always draws Vandy, but they never draw Florida. It's rare they draw Florida and Georgia, right? But they seem to draw Vandy pretty often. Purdue, FAU, Northwestern, Miami of Ohio, NC State, UConn, South Carolina, Charlotte, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and LSU, New Mexico round out the 7 to 7:30 slot. Generally, pretty high-profile slot. Ron?
Yep, high-profile slot. I like the Purdue Boilermakers laying the points against FAU. I think FAU has some issues right now. We saw last week they started up, pretty good against UCF. They were in that game. I think they had a 7-0 lead and maybe 14-7 lead as well. But it was 16-14 UCF at halftime. You're feeling pretty good if you're FAU. You're getting 8.5 points if you're taking them against the spread, but then they lose the game 40-14. The offense wasn't anywhere. They had 18 total yards of offense in the second half, and they gave up about 300. So really rough second half performance. I think they're in trouble here against Purdue. I like the Iowa Hawkeyes laying the points. It's not easy to lay in more than a field goal with Iowa these days with their offense, but I do think the big thing about Rutgers is their run defense. I'm not really impressed with right now, and I do think that the big thing of that is because they haven't really faced a team that can run the football very well. They faced Temple, Wagner, and Boston College, 3 teams that haven't really been efficient running the football. So now you've got Iowa coming in, a team that really the only time they're moving the ball is when they run it. I do think Iowa will find the situational scores, but I also think Iowa's defense holds Rutgers to under 10 points in this game, and that should be enough for a cover. And the other matchups, Northern Illinois, Kentucky is an interesting one. If Rocky Lombardi does play for Northern Illinois in this game, I would stay away from it. But if he doesn't, I do think Kentucky wins this game by 30 plus points, as Northern Illinois' offense is solid, and Rocky Lombardi is a big part of that. He was playing very well against Vanderbilt before his injury in the middle of that game. Northern Illinois was up by 2 touchdowns, looking like they were going to win that game outright pretty easily, but then he goes down. The defense is not very good, no matter if he's playing or not. That's one of the worst defenses in the MAC, but if he's playing, they can compete offensively. If he's not, it should be a blowout for Kentucky. So back of the injury report, sometimes the MAC schools don't really list a ton of injury reports throughout the week, but keep track of that and you see if he's going to be playing or not.
Chris?
Yeah, there's a few I like in this time slot. I'm going to go with Rutgers, plus a 7.5. If it was closer to 6.5, I would maybe stay off it. But getting the hook plus the touchdown, I think it's a 1-score game. So I'm going to take Rutgers plus the points. Iowa just really hasn't been able to move the football this season, and they haven't been able to score very much. And I know Rutgers isn't going to score much here either, but I think this is like 13-10 or 17-10, one of those ugly Big Ten games. I like Arkansas. I like a money line. I have no idea why. Texas A&M's favored here. If this game was at College Station, that's one thing. But I just think Arkansas is the better team. Texas A&M, they had Max Johnson take over, and he wasn't even all that good in that game against Miami.
Terrible.
He couldn't move football, and I don't think he's going to be able to match whatever KJ Jefferson's going to bring here for Arkansas. I think this one's all Arkansas all day, twice on Sunday. Give me Arkansas on that one. I also lean towards Alabama laying the 40.5. I think they're going to just steamroll Vanderbilt. And I also like laying the points with Ohio State against Wisconsin. I know it maybe sound crazy, but Ohio State usually whips up on Wisconsin. I think they've won 10 straight against the Badgers by an average of around 17 points a game. And I think this Wisconsin team, Graham Mertz, I don't like Graham Mertz as a quarterback. And I just think this is one of those games where Ohio State uses this as a statement win. 45-17, something like that. So give me the Buckeyes laying the points there.
I like New Mexico plus the bundle against LSU. I just think LSU is just not a great LSU team this year, and I think Brian Kelly knows that, and it's kind of just this patchwork thing going on. I think New Mexico good enough to cover the 31.5 points in that thing. I like Ohio State to blow Wisconsin's doors out as well. Ethel Mertz playing quarterback. He's this guy. I mean, ever since his first game when he had the 17 straight completions, it's been downhill ever since. Really a struggle in this Wisconsin team. Paul Chryst, he's got no answers when a team, starts putting points on it, because all he does is run the football and tries to play keep away, which works well if you're playing against New Mexico State. Doesn't work so well when you're down by 30, which is the potential to be here in Columbus. Should be a pretty lathered up crowd at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time in Columbus. Meanwhile, NC State against UConn, they love beating the bad teams. These teams like NC State and Maryland, they love home games against teams like UConn, right? Well, back. Then they'll be like, beating them up, act like they're the world champions or something. They love it. And they expect them to whoop up on them. 56-3 type game. Purdue against FAU, I agree with everything that Ron said about that thing where FAU I think when they get into the conference, they're going to be okay. They'll be in the Caribbean Bowl or the Bahamas Bowl or something, or the Boca Bowl, right? They'll be in one of these bowls, but it just seems that, last week they just really got dismantled at home. Now, then I like Troy against Marshall getting the points too at home. I think they beat them outright. And I think Arkansas wins outright as well against Texas A&M. Max Johnson's a scrub. And let's see. UNLV also against Utah State, laying the points on the road. Something wrong at Utah State this year. I think missing all those players that transferred out. Probably part of it. So a good slot. Mm-hmm. It's a nice slot. Mm-hmm. Go to 8 o'clock. New Mexico State. 4.5 point favorites against the Bows. You got Florida State. 17.5 point favorites over Boston College. ULM plus 9.5 against ULL, or you can call them Louisiana if if you haven't gotten an email from an athletic director. Oklahoma, 12.5 against Kansas State. Kansas State always whoops up on Oklahoma's ass. We'll take Kansas State in that one on the money line. Oregon State against USC. BYU versus Wyoming. BYU, even their easy games are tough games, you know. San Jose State versus Western Michigan. Arizona State against Utah. Oh man, that Quincy, oof. No bueno, right? Florida quarterback. What's his name?
Quincy. Oh, Emory Jones.
Emory Jones. Yeah, I thought I was thinking Quincy Jones. I think maybe Quincy Jones might be a better quarterback.
Might be better at music than football.
It's like Diana Ross. As and Washington taking on Stanford.
Well, how many times are we going to see New Mexico State favored in a game? Not too often. Those Aggies, they got a good defense. The offense is tough to watch, but Hawaii's also been really tough to watch this season. So I understand why they're favored. I think this is honestly New Mexico State's Super Bowl for the last five years of this program. They don't get too many chances to win a game, and against an FBS opponent at least. And I think this is a good chance they got. I also like ULM on the money line, getting over ULL or Louisiana, whatever tickles your fancy. But ULM, the team I think is under the radar right now. I think Louisiana, rebuilding year for them. No Billy Napier. A lot of the players that played in that Louisiana program for the past few seasons either transferred, graduated, moved on to the NFL. So we saw them last week. They looked miserable against Rice. The defense couldn't stop anything. They've now been torched for over 300 passing yards each of the last 2 weeks. The offense didn't do anything on the ground or through the air against a Rice defense that's kind of susceptible to that. So I don't like Louisiana, and I certainly wouldn't want to lay this many points with them on the road. We saw their first road game was a disaster, and I don't think this is going to get any easier. So give me the points, and I'll sprinkle a little bit on the money line with the ULM Warhawks. I believe that's what they are, Warhawks.
Yes.
For the record, I would pay good money to see Quincy Jones and Diana Ross go head-to-head on a football field. But I'm going to go with the over between Kansas State and Oklahoma. I just think this is going to be a back-and-forth game. We see a total of 53.5. I think this one gets up well into the 60s. So I think it's going to be, like I said, all over the field. They're going to be slinging the ball. So give me the over in that one. I also like the over between USC and Oregon State, even if it's a one-sided game. I'm not sure it will be, but I think this is, again, a game that's going to sort of hit the high 70s. So I like the over 70.5 in that one. And I also like Utah laying the big number against Arizona State. This Arizona State team is a disaster. And, the new coach, Rub, I don't think it's going to work for very long. We saw that happen with Nebraska last week. They had the new coach step in, and then they kind of got run over. I think it's going to be the same thing for Utah. I think they're going to run all over Arizona State, and I think Arizona State's in trouble here. So give me Utah laying the points.
Yeah, I like money line parlay here. Kansas State and Oregon State. I think you just parlay those two on the money line. I think they both win outright in these slots.
Add ULM.
You could throw ULM. You could also throw in. There's a few teams in there. I think Western Michigan's got a legitimate shot to beat San Jose State too. Last week, Western Michigan was playing Pitt. Romanelli gave me the text. Bet Pitt big. 3 words. And I did. I just bet Pitt big. Why not? Actually, the thing was, it was a late game, so I bet it a couple times throughout the day.
We got there.org.
Yeah. We discussed it a few times, so every time we talked about it, I just bet more on it. I have a tendency to do that. I get carried away. Never said I didn't. I kind of like Boston College here against Florida State getting the points at least. I think the Noles might be a little bit ahead of themselves. Backup QB here, as well. He's had time now to work with the team. But the thing is, when the backup QB has time to work with the team, the other team also has time to game plan for this guy, who is definitely a different animal than their other quarterback, and kind of different, But in he's not bad, and he might be better at some things, but he might be worse at others. And it's like he's still going to be inexperienced, and Boston College is probably going to throw some things at him that he hasn't seen. Plus, my friend's son is the backup quarterback on Boston College, so he was root for them anyway. Dylan Menard. Dave played for the Browns. Anyways, he also played in the World Football League in Berlin.
Wow.
Yeah, it happens. I think BYU, that schedule, man. It's like, I think you throw out that Oregon game, but Wyoming's not bad. I could see Wyoming covering in that thing. Sloppy, penalty-filled mess. But definitely good games, right? It's just a really good card this week and across the board. We've gone through every single game on the board. We're going to continue to do this throughout the rest of the week as the days go. Saturday morning, we'll have our college football show. We'll have these guys on, plus a bunch of other jokers on there, too, going over it. I know Jovan will be there. He's 14-2 in the NFL this season or something, right? So
Wow.
far. Yeah, that is ridiculous. And a lot of guys off to hot starts in college football. Anything else you guys want to add? Anything you missed? A lot of these money line dogs we seem to like.
Yeah, I like ULM money line, big time.
Well, we do hate the athletic director at
Amen.
ULL. We do hate their guts. Just shoot me an email. It's like,
That was so funny.
it's like, what'd you think was gonna happen? It's like, oh, we're sorry. Chris, anything you want to add here?
No, I think I like a lot of these games, but if we're going to give out money line dogs, I think the most likely that I think is going to come in is Arkansas, but I still think Wake Forest has a chance, even though that defense is a little bit sloppy. But I'm sticking with my guns on that one.
What's most
he's
likely
taking
to
a-
make the snack table this week at the Ruffalo house for
What's that?
college football? What's likely to hit the snack table here for?
The shorter list is what isn't. Do you want me to go alphabetical, reverse alphabetical, by country of origin?
I'm having nachos, and I'm not apologizing for it either.
I think we might do taquitos.
Mr. Ruffalo, you're so daring this week. Your big time money line dog is a 2.5 point underdog.
You know what?
Ooh.
It still counts. Still counts. I'd
I
rather
get
it
the
come
best
in.
chance.
I like Kansas State. I think they beat Oklahoma.
I Kansas State too.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you guys tomorrow morning, and we'll see you Saturday. Be sure to check out Ron's NFL rundown. He's got his final Major League Baseball rundowns of the season as we're going. But are you doing playoff rundowns for baseball?
I probably will, yeah.
Why not? Twist my arm. Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a winning week. I love college football. My favorite day of the week during my favorite time of the year.